Good evening. My name is Raymond Parrott, but you can call me Ray for short. I am currently a senior at EIU and I am an English language arts major trying to be a teacher in the very near future. Today I'm going to be doing a presentation of a coming of age novel that can be relatable to many people. The novel that I have chosen is titled Tomboy by author Liz Prince. A graphic memoir, it is about a young girl who struggles with her identity growing up and who she truly is as a person. She faces ridicule and judgment from many others and feels like she doesn't fit in at all. But does she find closure at the end? This is the author of the novel, Liz Prince. Prince was born in 1981 in Boston, Massachusetts. In 2002, her family moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, where she grew up, and is the main setting of the novel. This is her first graphic novel, actually, and it should remind you of another book that has the same style, which I'll talk about later on in the presentation. Like I said earlier, this is a coming-of-age tale that takes you on a journey throughout Liz's young life in elementary school, middle school, and high school. The coming-of-age story is a very popular genre for readers, as it has a relatability factor that young adults look forward to while reading it. Growing up, there are stages that children go through that defines us in the future. However, it is very different for boys and for girls. The two genders have major differences that affect us for the rest of our lives, including our personalities while growing up. This is especially true for Liz during the duration of the novel. For example, take this panel from the book. It showcases the different stages of Liz's life and how she has always been the definition of the word tomboy. All the way from age 4 in her toddler years, to her middle school years at age 10, and in her teens at the age of 16. So, with that said, what is gender? Another part of this major graphic novel / memoir is that it tackles the issue and definition of the word gender. Gender is defined as either of the two sexes, male or female, especially when considered with reference to social and cultural differences rather than biological ones. This term is also used more broadly to denote a range of identities that do not correspond to either male or female gender. Here is an example of this in play. I have chosen two sets of toys. One meant for boys, and one meant for girls. Liz does not like the idea of playing with girl toys, and instead has action figures and Ghostbusters equipment. Which, by the way, side note, is a great cartoon from the 80s, and I totally recommend watching it as well as reading this novel too, because that's what this presentation is about. So, please read it. And the Ghostbusters cartoon. It's very good. While this slide is in a different language, Portuguese I think, it showcases how Liz thinks of herself, and how others like her might think of themselves as well. She starts to question her sexuality for the first time as a teen, and wonders if the reason she cannot get a boyfriend is because she is too much like a boy and is holding her back. So, what is a tomboy? A tomboy is a girl who often rejects society's standards of what a girl is and should be interested in. A common trope of a tomboy is that they are often skaters who have short haircuts and fights all the time. A popular example of a famous tomboy would be Buttercup from the Powerpuff Girls. This is the anime version of her. It wasn't very popular at all, but it's just a good example. Even though there are tomboys in popular culture, Liz still believes that they do not represent her at all. In this picture you can see that Liz talks about how the tomboys in movies and television are still way too girly for her, not truly represent what she is really about as a person and as a girl. So, I categorize Liz Prince's art style as doodle graphic style. That is probably not a real thing, and I probably made it up, but I couldn't find the right style at all. This picture wasn't done by Liz Prince exactly, but it kind of resembles how she drew the characters in the story. What it does actually look like is the style that is found in Diary of a Wimpy Kid books that you might have read as a young kid. The characters look the same, and it's also a coming of age story series that follows one boy's journey as a middle child. Just don't touch the cheese, please, or you'll end up getting the cheese touch. And no one wants the cheese touch. But back to the coming of age stuff. There's also the idea of romance that comes into play. Liz starts to feel like she is going to end up alone because of her nature, and while she has moments of happiness, it's still hard for her to find love as a tomboy. It's something that all teenagers can relate to while growing up. The novel is also full of time skips. The definition of a time skip is that it's a crucial element of narration depicted in many different ways by comic artists, as McLeod points out extensively. Part of the closure process for the reader consists of deciding how much time passes within and across panels. Being a tomboy is one time skip that occurs is the fact that Liz goes from one stage of her life to another in just a page or two. This picture represents what phase that she goes through in the book. You guys can probably already guess what it is, but I'm not going to spoil it as I want you to read the book after all. Hint, it's Paramore. Being tomboy is what Liz is good at, and this pencil shows it perfectly. She showcases that it's okay to be tough and rough with the boys. This novel is also a great representation of women empowerment and is a way of saying that it's okay to be yourself. Don't let anyone control or tell you who you are as a person. This graphic novel also has the idea of active literacy. The definition is that it is the idea that comics can require more decoding and interactive engagement than many other art forms. In part because it has at least 2 tracks of information conveyance and because it calls for so much closure. Closure is the phenomenon of observing only parts perceiving the whole. As we read comics, we trust that things exist elsewhere outside of what's depicted on the page, without actual evidence at that moment that they do. As in real life, when we form closure, we mentally fill in the missing parts. So that was my presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed it and hope you read this book. Bye!